I think really the difference is leaning forward, right? So instead of leaning back and just saying, sure, whatever, it's leaning forward. It's getting to the point where, everybody that I know that's really smart doesn't write code by hand. For me, it happens at 11:30 p.m. every day. And then after that, it runs another, essentially like a Ralph loop. And it basically looks at key metrics of my app, and then it picks the largest problem. So I use mostly skills now and not MCPs. I think we're moving to a reality where there's going to be a lot of solo founders. So I've built 3 startups. The last startup I built had over 100 people, but it's just me. There's still no shortcuts. Like, just because you have agents now doesn't mean there's magic shortcut to making millions of dollars. You still have to do the work, right? It's just that the work is now higher level.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Founders Foyer with me, Aishwarya. This foyer is full of conversations. The space where creators, founders, and builders look for all the support and concepts to grow their ideas into products. AI coding largely means pasting prompts into random chat boxes for most people, but a few of them are quietly rebuilding and prepping themselves for a futuristic software building, I would say. Carson has been living in this future that most AI builders are just now waking up to. After spending a decade helping over 1 million people learn to code with Treehouse, and also serving formally as a builder in residence at AMP, he's simply obsessing over one simple question. What happens when a coding agent just doesn't autocomplete your ideas, but actually ships production code with you across your real repo night after night? In this episode, we'll dig into how his structured thinking and ship code while you sleep, and I think it's really while you sleep, loop actually works in practice, why he thinks unstructured vibe coding is holding most people back, and how his new reportees, aka automated workflows and cron jobs, can actually reshape what it means to be a one-person company. Ryan, I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Excited to have the conversation. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Ryan, you've moved from teaching humans to code, which you did formally with your company, with Treehouse, to now teaching AI to code with humans. So how does it really change your perspective around what it means to even code at today's perspective?
It's wild to be alive right now. I crossed the generations from being pre-internet to internet to pre-mobile to mobile, and now to AI, and it's just, I can't believe it all happened in my lifetime.
Right.
And it really is astonishing. I think all of us who are using Opus 4.5 now to code are just blown away at how good it is. So it's it's an amazing time to be alive. I often can't believe it's real. I think Ilya said in his interview with Dwarkesh, like, can you believe this is all real? Like, can you believe it actually works? And I think all of us are astonished, like predicting the next token turns out to create intelligence. So here we are.
I know, here we totally are. And you're right. I mean, this has been such a wave across decades, right? I think every decade we had this aha moment, and then it was first with hardware, and then it was, like SaaS and software, and then there was mobile, and then now it's just, I would say the decade has come shorter with just a couple of months, couple of years, and then a couple of weeks to days right now. So it's insane that with every builder, I keep telling them that, what do you mean even product launched? It's just something that's going out every second. So it just feels like it's a wild time. So for someone who's just learning to code today, let's take these high schoolers, let's take folks who are just entering the whole job scene in the space. Are you seeing something different from how it used to be? Of course, we all know that there's AI agents that's helping us code, but beyond that, has something been on your mind, especially because you've been on the forefront and you've seen this change across? So is there like a shift in perspective you see, especially for the novice folks starting?
Yes. I think the most important thing right now is to be agentic yourself as a human. And what I mean by that is to have agency, to be the type of person that says, I don't know how to do that, but I can figure it out. And so now if you have that mentality, because you have an agent to support you, you can really build almost anything. So I would encourage people that are listening to the show, if you don't code right now, all I would do is pick a tool, and there's a number of them. So I was at AMP for a while. I love AMP. It's great. I'm not being paid to say this, but we offer a free plan. So just go to ampcode.com and sign up for the free plan, and then you get $10 a day and free credit. So just do that, right? And start talking, to an agent. You could obviously start with ChatGPT. You could start with Claude Code. Sort of, they're all kind of the same in the sense that there's a smart agent out there that wants to help you. So get the tool and use it. So that's like thing one. And we've been trained for a long time to feel like we need to ask the right question, or we'll look dumb, or maybe we won't get the right answer. But now that we have agents, you can just start. so people think, well, I don't know what app to build, or I don't know how to build an app, or I don't even know what that means. Well, just say that to the agent, right? And then you'll end up at a point where you are building stuff.
There's no such thing such as a dumb question with agent. It's just going to help.
They have infinite patience and they're friendly and kind, unlike humans. So
true.
I would start there and just train yourself to be honest with the agent about if you don't get it, right? If it starts saying something that feels too advanced or confusing, just say that. And then you end up being able to learn almost anything. A practical example of this is that, I started off with a computer science degree. I was coding by hand, and then I, started companies and started hiring engineers, and then I got abstracted away from the code, and I wasn't really a developer. I was a CEO, founder. Since then, I've obviously gone back in and learned how to code again as an engineer, and now I feel like I'm a pretty comfortable, accomplished engineer now. Like, I understand what's happening because I've asked the agent so many times, like, how does that work? Like, I don't understand what that means. And now I understand what it means. So.
Yeah, no, totally with you. Super practical tips. And I love the way that you phrased it as agentic, because I think the minute something feels like an agent and it has AI in it, people just try to complex the whole situation, the whole scenario. But then the fact is that most often it's just our likability to start, and it's just not about AI in itself, but just our own hesitations that's just leaving us from getting started with the conversation. So, yeah, absolutely with you on that. And
Amen.
as we talk, Ryan, about starting these conversations with, let's say, ChatGPT, your Codex, or AMP, and whatever agent there is available, most people claim that they do vibe coding, right? Which is, just chatting with AI without some sort of a structure. They just go about asking things, which I think is very good because, as we just spoke, it helps clarify a few things. But is there something like a good session and a bad session with AI agents? Especially, what does a bad session look like? And can you walk us through that? And also, what does a good structure look like?
So I think there's a big difference now between vibe coding and agentic engineering. So I would say they're very different things. And so if you just want to have fun and just want to build and you don't care, vibe coding is great, right? So if you think about, like, I just want to make a game, I don't care, how it's coded or how many people are going to use it. I just want to have some fun. Like, just go with it, right? And that's vibe coding. But if you're building real stuff, you're really doing agentic engineering. And I think there's a big difference in that. So So what is the difference between the two? I think really the difference is leaning forward, right? So instead of leaning back and just saying, sure, whatever, it's leaning forward. And as soon as the agent does something and you don't understand why it's doing it or what is happening, you start asking questions, right? So you might say, well, why are you doing that? Or how does that work? Or, what happens if? And then what happens is you start going into agentic engineering, where you're really collaborating with the agent versus just letting it, do whatever it wants.
Right.
The thing to remember is, as brilliant as Opus 4 or 5 is, and the agentic harnesses like AMP or Claude Code are, models don't have what we would call sort of like common sense. They're not able, like humans are, to have this sort of medium to long term context around the project or what you're trying to do. And so they often make what looks like dumb mistakes. So a good example of that is, Opus 4 or 5 doesn't spend a lot of time looking through your code base to make sure it
Mm.
understands all the code before it starts editing. It will usually just start writing code as soon as it thinks it understands. Um, and that can cause all sorts of problems, right? So
Yeah.
what you should do is like learn slowly, talk to the agent a lot, get more and more comfortable with your code base. And then you can start asking good questions and saying, well, why did you do that? And then often the agent will say, oh, yeah, good point. I hadn't thought of that. Um, so that's the big difference between vibe coding and
Mm.
agentic engineering. And everybody should be moving towards agentic engineering. Like that's where the jobs are. That's where the future is. I think vibe coding is just kind of a fun thing to do in your free time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, it also sounds more like the same person can actually oscillate between the two
oh
and
yeah.
then choose to be the vibe coder when the necessity is and doing something for fun, like you said. Versus I think the alternate sounded more like being in command, basically like trying to just be out there and then trying to decide, which you made a very interesting point about the common sense part of it, because I've heard a lot of them say, hey, these models are either like genuinely too smart or too dumb. It's just like behaving like probably like a preschooler, or it's just
Right.
behaving like a PhD student, and then there's like no in between. So yeah, definitely. I think personally, from using some of these models across and also looking at the way that each of them performs for certain specific actions, like certain like Opus is really good for design versus a Gemini that's really good for something else, and there's also like demarcations between these models. So from what you say, it's also looking like you need to be constantly talking to these models and sharing what your input is for it to give you like a very contextual output. So that's what a good structure would look like then.
Yes. Yeah. Engage your brain. Don't outsource your thinking. That's the primary difference between agentic engineering and vibe coding. I think the other thing is people should really look into concepts like compound engineering, which Karen Clarkson from Every introduced. It's pretty simple. The idea,
Mm.
and it's actually a skill that you can install for your agent, or it's a plugin if you use Cloud Code, and it's pretty simple. Like you have this idea of at the end of a session, you
Mm.
basically say, compound the learning, and what that does is it causes the agent to go back through the thread and
Right.
look for things where it ran into gotchas or it made mistakes, and then it updates either agents.md if you're on AMP or Codex or anything except for Cloud Code, or
Mm.
Claude.md if you're using Cloud Code. And then you start to have less of the frustrating common sense pitfalls where you're like,
Right.
oh my gosh, why didn't you know that? Well, because you haven't written it down in your agents.md file. That's why.
Yeah.
So I think once you use compound engineering, you start to have less of those common sense pitfalls. And then you go on top of that, which is compound product, right? Which is something I'm toying
Mm.
with, which is this idea that every night you run 2 cron jobs.
Mm.
The first cron job is a compound learning loop where it's a bash script, and basically it fires up your agent and it says, okay, look at all the threads today and
Mm-hmm.
use your compound engineering skill and look for things that we need to put in agents.md. So it does that. For me, it
Oh.
happens at 11:30 p.m. every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then after that, it runs another, essentially like a Ralph loop, and it basically looks at key metrics of my app, and then it picks the largest problem that we have with the app, and then it solves that problem, and then it submits a PR, and then I wake up to a PR in the morning. So
Oh,
it's
that's
like
sweet.
this idea of compound learning and then compound product. Like that's how you start to really, turn
Okay.
yourself into a extremely productive person.
Right. So compound learning is more to do with prepping your agents and the models themselves. I really like the phrasing to it. In some sense, there's like this hack that I personally use as well on all of my projects, which is there are certain times that there's always like an instructional.md file or a like an agentic file that it refers to. Certain times when I'm just riffing with the models and then trying to make it understand really why I'm in command for executing certain things, I would ask questions in between the conversations for which I'll ask the model to keep summarizing what it understood from my conversation. I'll basically like
Nice.
copy all of that, put it into a .txt file, and I would say, hey, like whatever we've spoken so far, all the steps that you've given me in terms of execution is in like random order in this. Go read that through and then like basically tell me if you're missing something, or like if there's something that
Smart.
you would add to it. So, and honestly, that's been like the biggest unlock for me, because it's always like come back to say, oh, you know what, this is like the perfect order. And then I say, there's this joy in like saying, let's go implement this, because now I kind of know, oh my
Yeah.
God, like everything is just so on point. So I think it sounds
Smart.
so much like a compound engineering as much as, something that I didn't give it a phrase for, but sweet. I would
That's
love
smart.
for you to dig a little bit. Yeah, thank you. I would love for you to dig a little bit deeper into the compound product concept, because I think there was one thing I really wanted you to show these people as well in terms of the listeners. I would love for them to see how you're running this whole system of, setting up an agent that goes and fetches a certain set of reports for you. And in the morning, you're constantly like being updated. So do you
Yes.
mind walking us through how you've set up this whole thing?
Yeah. So the first thing to do is not to make it more complex than it needs to be, right? So I think take a step back and forget about agents or AI and just think about, well, how would I improve this thing I'm working on, right? Whether it's a business or an app or whatever, you think, well, what would I do every day if I could improve it? And most of the time, the first thing you do in a business is you would have a VP of marketing or a VP of sales or a VP of engineering, and you have a meeting with them in the morning, and they would say, hey, Ryan, I noticed that our free trials signups are down. It looks like we're getting less traffic from this source. I'm going to dig into it, and I'll come back to you and suggest something. And then they would do it, and they would come back, and you would see the results, and you would just iterate, right? And
Yeah.
so identify what you would do to improve whatever it is you're working on. And then you think about, actually, well, how could I have an agent be a part of that loop? And so what I do for Untangle, which is the startup that I'm building, is I have key, statistics in the database, things like free trial signups, landing page visits, et cetera, et cetera. And so I thought, oh, what I'm going to do is I'm going to output the data to a markdown file every night. And then I'm going to have an agent look at that markdown and then make a call to Opus 4 or 5 and to decide what would be the one thing that I would do if I was a VP of marketing, and I saw this data to improve signups, right? And then it comes back with a suggestion. And then I would say, well, now I want the AI to implement that suggestion. Why wait until I wake up, right? Like it might as well just try it. And then I wake up to a pull request instead of having to decide, whether or not it should try it. Excuse me. So I think that's the loop, right? And it sounds complex, like agents and cron jobs and loops and compounding. But the truth is, It's just take data, look at the data, decide what you could do to improve the data, do that, and then try it. So now technically what's happening is that we are executing AMP or Claude code on the command line in a bash script. Like, what does that mean? Again, you should just ask an agent because it will tell you. But the idea is
100%.
a bash script can execute commands on the command line, right? And so you can run an agent like Claude Code or AMP by saying AMP dash X, and then you put the prompt in quotes. And what that does is it fires up AMP and it runs, in the background. And then when it's done, it stops. So all you're really doing is creating a bash script that starts the agent with a prompt. And then it does that every day at a certain time. So the question is like, how do you get the right data into the prompt? Right. So that's where you pipe in a markdown file and say, here's today's marketing stats, and your job is to look at those, figure out what's right or wrong, make a decision. And then it fires up another bash command to start AMP again and say, okay, your job is to fix this problem, go do it and then submit a PR at the end. So it's just 2 calls to AMP. That's all that's really happening here. And it sounds complex and hard, but it's not. That's all that's really happening.
Yeah. And I think you also put it in the right way. Like when you have the right data and when you know what to do with the data, then I guess your steps are also simplified. And
Yeah.
to what it's, as a fairness, I think most operators and founders today have this data. It's just the fact that we don't know how to operate with the data, or
Right.
we actually don't know what to do with the data. I think
Yeah.
that's the problem, because at the end of the day, everybody understands that, go to any founder or go to anybody who's building an app and ask them, hey, like, how many signups do you have? And then there's always like a DB, there's always like 10 things that they can pull off and show you. There's clarity, there's Mixpanel, there's so many, products that they technically set up as soon as, an app or a certain
Right.
product is into picture. It's just that there's always this confusion about how do I make one talk to the other. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the whole, yeah,
What do you
no,
do
what
with
do
the
you do?
data? What do you do with the
Exactly.
data? Like it
Exactly.
it turns out like probably the data is already just in your Postgres database. Like just start very simply. Instead of piping the data out, to a mix panel, just keep the data in your database, then pull it out, give it to the agent, and have the agent decide what to do with it. We're in this kind of world now where it's actually very powerful just to have the data yourself, and then output the data to a markdown file, or you could even install a Postgres MCP and have the agent query the database. There's obviously some security risks with that, but we're in a whole new world
Yeah.
where, like you said, that you don't need to have analysis paralysis anymore, because you can
Yeah.
have the agent take the first cut at there's all this data. Like what are two things we should think about, right?
Yep.
And do it.
Absolutely. And like you rightly pointed out as well, you ask the agent what to do. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone's just listening to this part of the episode, or someone's just seeing your tweet, all it takes is just put that tweet to the agent and then ask it, hey, I want to do this with my data. And I basically have this data in Postgres or Superbase or whatever it is. And tell me the exact steps that I need to do to set it up. And I'm sure the agent is going to tell the exact steps in terms of step 1, step 2, step 3. So it's
Yeah.
it's almost like I think the whole I really resonated with you when you said people get scared with AI. It's just that it's too huge, it's too big, it's just too hard to sort of like put into that agentic mindset. But I think it just comes down to being willing to ask agent
Right.
and then like try to say, you know what, I really don't know how to do this. Can you just walk me through this?
Yeah, or can you do it? I mean, so
Yeah.
there's so many times where AMP will say something like, "Well, here's how you do it," and I'll go, "You do it," and it's like,
You do
okay,
it. Exactly.
I mean, and I think it's basically a learned behavior. What people need to realize is, as soon as they say, "I don't know," then ask the agent, right? So, for instance,
Right.
like say that they're listening to this and they think, "Oh, cool. So I need data to give to my agent every day." Well, I don't know what data to give. Well, great. Ask the agent that. Say, "Hey, agent, given what you know about our app, what are the key stats? Like, what are the 5 stats that really, really matter? Okay, are those in our database? Are we collecting those? Okay, we're not. Well, go do it. Right? Okay, you did it. Now I want you to build a script that pulls out that data every day and puts it in a markdown file." So it's an amazing time to be alive, because anytime you used to say, "I don't know," now you just say, "How do I?" And then
How will
you
you
get it.
to the agent?
How do you do it? Do it. Okay.
No, totally. As I always say, there's so much joy in just trying to say, go implement this, or, go do this for me,
Oh, it's
especially
magic.
after it has, it is magic.
It's so
every,
good.
every waking day, I just derive so much joy in putting that line and then sitting back and watching it execute stuff. So
I know it used to be so much work. Oh my gosh. Like, I think that's why everybody I know that remembers the old way, that built products by, reading I have like an O'Reilly book behind me, because like
yes.
it used to be hard. Like you used to have to get the book, open it up and look for how to do this. And then copy and paste the code and then try it.
Yeah.
It didn't work. And then you go to Stack Overflow and kind of get an answer. Someone would make you feel bad for asking, that's all gone. Like, and now there's this joy in building again, because all the crap has been taken out and all the fun is back in. Right. So,
yeah. No, I am totally with you on this. And as someone who's experiencing it, I just wish so many people who are listening to this also get started so that they can partake in that joy and actually experience this for themselves. So cool. In fact, I have like a follow-up question to that because we're talking about data and we're talking about how these agents technically just two types of agents, two types of calls working on the data and giving you all the output that you want. People also talk about MCPs, right? Because there's also like MCPs being the right way to connect data, and then there was all this fad around, oh, like you can connect different MCPs to your different agents and then watch it combine data. So I just want to, I think, differentiate between at least from your working experiences, where MCPs can actually be helpful, especially from the data context that we're talking about, as
Yep.
opposed to, let's say, these kind of agents directly working on your markdown files or your data, wherever it is. Like, is there any sort of a difference in perspective or output that you see?
Yes. So I use mostly skills now and not MCPs. So a good example, well, let me back up. So in order to use agents well, they need to have a good feedback loop. And what that means is the agent needs to be able to understand if what it is doing is correct or not.
Correct.
So you have to always think about, well, how can I empower the agent to do that instead of me copying and pasting? As soon as you're copying and pasting, you're doing it wrong, right? So as soon as you do that, you think, okay, I need to find a skill or find an MCP that allows the agent to, solve its own problem. So an example is I used to have the Playwright MCP installed. And Playwright, for anybody listening that doesn't know, is basically an amazing framework that allows, it used to write code to control the browser, but now the agent can write code to control the browser. But actually, I've taken a step back, and there's a new install and skill called Agent Browser. So it's Agent Browser. It was created by the Vercel team. It's open source. It's free. It's great. So if you're listening to this, just ask your agent to go find Agent Browser by the Vercel team and install it, and it will do it. And what it is basically it teaches the agent how to fire up Chrome on a debug port and then use Playwright to control it, right? And it's amazing. And so what I don't use the Playwright MCP, I just use the Agent Browser skill, which is using Playwright under the hood. So
Right.
Now, if that doesn't make any sense, all I'm really saying is skills are really where it's at right now.
Right.
And there's a website called, I think it's skills. Is it skills.h? Yeah, skills.sh.
Okay.
It's this amazing sort of list of good skills. And you'll probably see the agent browser at the top of that. So
Nice.
that's primarily what I'm doing. I have one MCP for Sentry, which I use occasionally. So Sentry is a tool to monitor your logs and look for errors. And it's pretty great. So what you can say to your agent is, hey, do we have any Sentry errors? And it goes and uses the MCP to look. And then it can sort of get a bunch of info on that.
Right.
I don't use that as much.
Right. Fair. Okay.
But yeah, MCPs, I'm using them less. It's mostly about skills right now. So the compound engineering skill, the agent browser skill, the Ralph skill. These are a couple of things that I use a lot.
Nice. So yeah, I think it's also safe to say that as there's more advancement in the way these models perform, there's also going to be like constant upgradation in terms of like which gets better to work with the models. So I guess like 4-5 months ago, or at least safe to say like about 6-7 months ago, I think MCPs were the format to get the data from different tools. But I so side with you around the skills because it feels like these agents are working better with skills. It's almost like the feeding information that it needs for getting to do certain actions. So yeah, so slowly I think the transformation, as you rightly pointed out, is coming off from MCPs to the skills. And almost, let's say, there are still some cases where MCPs can barely get you the data, maybe. Like, you don't have to do the old school integration or the old school, like, oh, I'm going to auth this with this, and then, like get into the loop of getting stuck. But I guess that's where MCPs can really be helpful to get you auth through the stuff and then get you the data. And I guess skills can then work on top of that data with the agents.
And it's interesting, though, because so I host everything on Vercel. I love it. I'm not being paid to say anything. I'm a big fan as well. So I'm not on anyone's payroll. So everything I'm saying is just because I like it. And I love Vercel, as you do. And So they have an amazing CLI. Like the CLI tool, the Vercel tool is extremely powerful, and they just shipped an update, and it knows about every single API on Vercel. And
Mm.
so if you add in a skill which helps the agent understand how to use the CLI tool, you basically get all the benefits of MCP without all the extra
Ah,
context bloat.
interesting.
And so because agents are really good at running bash commands, like, and
Mm.
they're really good at using CLI tools. And so I try to default to using a CLI tool with a skill instead of an MCP
Mm.
because it just seems faster. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just amazing. Yeah. So I would say if you're on Vercel, update the latest Vercel CLI tool. Make
Yep.
sure you have a skill installed, and you'll love it. It's great.
Yeah. I guess at the end of this podcast, everybody's going to go look up for the agent to say, hey, how do I create my skill if they've not already? But then
Yeah.
really wish for more folks to sort of do that. And I think I'm recently a convert, or rather, I would say I shift between the ID chat boxes and terminals. So it's almost like I'm in the middle ground right now, not completely a convert to CLI yet, but I do see a lot of benefits, especially working with the instructional files, whether it's like MD files or whether it's some of these skills stored in the MD files, more to be easier through the terminal than through some of these, agentic chatbot interfaces.
Right.
So yeah, I do see the point there. Cool. So I just want to close the loop on compound product thought of it. So technically, compound product is what we spoke over the last couple of minutes in terms of understanding what's really something you want to go improve on in your product, and then trying to compound engineer through these agents and do one task well, one day at a time. And when you sleep, that is.
While you sleep. That's right. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then in the end, you'll probably end up running, 3 of these loops at night. I think that's where we're kind of going, is people managing, these fleets of agents and figuring out how to parallelize as much as possible. We'll kind of see how it goes.
Right. Absolutely. Can't wait for I don't want to say the future because that's already happening. So I just can't wait for people to get started with that setup. So as we're talking about the AI coding agents, I have a question for you around evaluating the output of an AI agent, right? Because I've often heard from people, and we ourselves spoke about the context and sometimes the agent giving you like a bad answer or not being able to get through the memory of the last few chats. What's I don't know whether to call it as a framework or what's the certain rubric that you go by personally from your experiences to evaluate where coding agents are today, and where do you see, or how do you see teams using it better? Like, when do you judge that something is working well, something is not working well, and how do you get these agents apart from skills? How is there anything else that you can get these agents to give you like the kind of right output?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, the leading agents in my mind are AMP and Claude Code. And I think a lot of people are using Codex. I don't use Codex, so I can't speak to it.
Oh,
But
okay. I'm a
I
Codex fan, but yeah.
oh, cool. I keep wanting to try it because I hear GPT 5.2 is amazing, and so I kind
I
of
think it's
feel like
really great with your databases and something like if anything that you have from a complex data perspective. It's really good. But
cool.
yeah, apart from that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing that, so it's like I'm tempted to try it.
Mm,
But I think most of these harnesses are pretty good, right? I think if
mm,
you're going to choose Claude Code, or you're already using Claude Code, great. If you're going to use AMP or you're using AMP, great. Like, these are good tools.
mm,
I don't think you need to be worried that either any of them are going to be bad.
mm.
I think the most important part is pick one and get good with it, right?
Ooh.
So if you can imagine, this is like you are a runner, right? And you're picking your shoes, right? Pick your shoes and stick with your shoes, and get to know your shoes and use them more, right? And then it's a very important tool. So I think the more time you spend with your agent and really get good at it, the better. So I use AMP. I love AMP. Like,
Mm,
I'm very good at using AMP. It's got a lot of functionality that I use heavily. I only use it as a TUI or on the CLI.
Mm.
because it's a power tool. And so I think folks, pick one. I think there's this like FOMO going on where it's like, oh, maybe I
Oh,
should be using Cloud
absolutely.
Code, or maybe I should
Yeah.
be using Codex, or maybe I should be using AMP. Just pick one and get good at it.
Mm.
Anthropic's not going away, AMP's not going away, OpenAI is not going away. Like these things are going to be around. So
Right.
just pick one and get good at it. And also,
Right.
it's getting to the point where everybody that I know that's really smart doesn't write code by hand. And so I think if you're in there, trying to do tab completion or editing the files, you're doing the wrong thing. Like you should be letting the agent write the code. And then if it's super important code, review it, understand it,
Mm.
know it. Um,
Right.
but you shouldn't be micromanaging the agent. I think if you're doing that, you're doing it wrong.
Right. I think there's a subtle difference then between the whole commanding the agent to do it your way versus also micromanaging. I guess now the micromanaging is no longer about, because there was a time when folks said asking an agent to do what you want was sort of the micromanaging, but I think we're far past that stage, because what looks like micromanaging now is technically doing those tab complete, or like sort of taking that engagement with AI agent in a wrong way, versus if you really go very specific about the way that you want and give it all the context, I guess that's no longer micromanagement. That's more like the engineered way to get to the output that you want.
Yes, and I think what we're finding is with good agent harnesses, like a Cloud Code or like an AMP, you don't need to tag files really anymore.
Mm,
Like, so you used to
true.
have to do this, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
what's the right context to give the model? Most of the time you don't have to do that unless you want to, shortcut maybe the first step where it's grepping, a
Mm,
bunch.
mm,
But most of the time you don't even need to do that. And then it does
yeah.
a very good job of finding the right file and reading the right
Mm,
lines. So I think that is something you don't have to
yeah.
micromanage
Well, that's
anymore.
very true. Yeah,
So
I also have a feeling that some of these providers, like you mentioned, like whether it's Anthropic or whether it's OpenAI or AMP, for that, I've not used AMP yet. It just makes me so curious to go get
I'm giving
started.
you
So
FOMO. It's bad. See,
you did.
this is the
No, but
problem is we're all going, maybe your tool, maybe I should do it. And it's like, just use your
it's
tool. You're
yes,
probably
that's
good
so
at
true,
Codex.
right?
So
Yes, totally. I use a combination of Augment plus Codex. So I'm on VS Code, just use both Augment and VS Code. I'm sorry, Augment and Codex as the extensions. But you're right. Like, see, in some sense, I also feel like this is so much contextual, at the same time a contrary advice, because there's also like way too many things happening when you open X, when you open LinkedIn. There's just ton of
I
posts.
know.
There's ton of new things that you get to know every day. So as someone who is in the forefront of AI and wants to learn everything, I think it's just not enough. It just feels like, I have to know this. I have to know this. Like, what's Claudebot? Why did it change its name? And there's way
why
too many
why is it
things.
Moltbot now? What's happening?
Exactly. What's happening?
I
And then,
know.
should I buy a Mac Mini? Should I not?
No.
What's all
Yeah.
this?
I know it's
So,
stressful. You just got to take a step back and take a deep breath, and dig into what you're already doing and get better at it, right? And yeah, there's a couple things that I think people need to be aware of. Like if you're not generally aware of this idea of compound engineering or compounding, like then you do need to get on that, right? But your current tool can do it, right? So don't
right,
switch tools, or buy a Mac Mini to
right.
do it. It's more like, what are you doing right now with your agent, and how can you compound that, right?
Right.
Like this morning, I was thinking, I just had the idea this morning for this idea that every day I should run a cron job to do compound engineering on the threads I ran that day. So I just ran down to AMP really quick and said, okay, I have this idea. Like, I'd like you to read all the threads in the last 24 hours. I'd like you to use compound engineering to look for what we learned. And I want to make sure that you updated all the right agents.md files, and then ship that. And it's probably like 30 minutes of back and forth with AMP. And now that cron job runs on my Mac, right? Like,
very
and
nice.
I didn't
No
know how to
Mac
do
Mini.
that. No Mac Mini. I was like this close, like to buying. I was like, oh no, like
I swear. And I have my very own close friends have Mac Mini, so I was like literally pinging them to say, hey, is it any better? I've always been tempted, but now it's temptation to the core. Should I do it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, my MacBook just sits here on my desk at night. Like I can just use Caffeinate to keep it on, Like it's not
Exactly.
doing anything else. Like it's basically a Mac Mini. I don't need to buy one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, this is super grounded piece of information, I would say, because there's always again, I'm gonna touch this topic back once again to ask you, but I think on the whole, it's really actionable to focus on what you're already working on, especially the tool of your choice. And I think it's just a matter of, hey, if you've not gotten started, then yes, of course, you have to decide where do you really want to go towards, and then pick and learn about the tool. But I guess for people who are hearing this and who already have some sort of a process through what they're doing with AI, it's just doubling down on that and then finding more avenues, like you mentioned, to keep doing that in a better way. So
yep.
yeah, that makes so much sense.
I mean, it's almost like there's still no shortcuts. Like just because you have agents now
Yeah.
doesn't mean there's magic, shortcut to making millions of
Mm,
dollars. You still have to do the work, right?
mm,
It's just that the work is now higher level. And what I mean by that is there's no secret trick that someone said on X that you're missing, which is keeping you from being a successful agentic engineer. It's just not real.
right.
Like what you need to do is get your hands on the keyboard, right?
Yep.
And engage your brain, and then and start talking to your agent. that, that- that's the most important
Yeah.
thing. Like hands on keyboards, or if you're using Whisperflow, start talking to your agent, right?
Yep, yep. Oh, I'm a huge fan of Whisper as well. So, and what you just said, basically is going to be like a nervous system calming down for most of them listening, because constantly like, agitated with knowing stuff. But just as a sideline to this, let's say, I am sticking to a tool, I am getting better with what I do, finding these avenues to grow. What would you still think as the most sanest way to keep in tabs with what's happening? Like, for example, like how do I get to know something like a skills.sh? How do I get to know that, hey, like Vercel has launched this and I would love to try it because I am already proficient with CLI? So is there like some sort of a sane approach to be on top and still like sort of choose to be away?
Gosh, it's what I do is mostly through X. I think if you follow a couple good accounts,
Mm,
I think Kieran Clarkson, who is I guess they call him the project owner or the manager of Cora at Every. He's super switched on. I would follow him.
oh yeah.
I'd follow. I think it's Vercel. I think I can't remember if it's Vercel Engineering or that. Just find a couple key X accounts, I
Right.
think, and then pay attention to that. There's a
Right.
couple great podcasts.
Mm,
Clairvo has a great show as well. You've got
yep.
a great show. There's a couple things like I think if you just pick a couple, you'll
Mm,
probably get the highlights.
right.
But just avoid the trap of thinking that you're just one trick away from unlocking everything. It's just not true.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So basically, like filter out and like learn where to tune in and learn where to step back and
Yep.
sort of work in your own ways. Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, and one question that I'd love to pick your brain on is there's no dearth for existing founders, whether they're tech or non-tech. I think there's nothing called as a non-tech anymore. It's just that everybody is in tech space, so I shouldn't be calling the non-tech founders technically, but everybody wants to 10x their output, and that's what we're talking about. Is there like a one person or just one person being able to set up an entire company or entire apps of sorts? And what's your I don't know, some sort of like um conviction around it, I would say, because we're seeing like all of these agents being the replacement of teammates in every team. So is there like a certain future that you see with just one person behind all of the wheels? And you are a good example yourself for doing that.
Yeah. I think we're moving to a reality where there's going to be a lot of solo founders that start companies and then scale them to 5, 10, 15 people max.
Mm,
And so I've built 3 startups. The last startup I built had over 100 people. Raised a bunch of money for it, and I'm essentially building a similar app in complexity, tackling a similar difficult problem, but it's just me. Um,
mm,
and I used to have a CTO and a VP of Eng, and lots of engineers and product managers and, DevOps and marketers. And, I'm kind of doing all of it now, not as well as, some of those experts that have been doing it for a decade more, but well enough. Right. So I think that's
Yeah.
where we're going. I'm currently raising, a small seed round, but
Hmm.
I almost don't even need to do that. Like, and there's I think a lot of founders are going to raise a little bit of money and never raise again.
Hmm.
So it's a really exciting time to be a founder. Like it really is. Like your ability to multiply your output with very little capital has never been better. But it also means there's a lot of people building stuff, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but hey, that's just the world we live in. So that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah. And I think it's no longer about like one person or a solo person because uh, throughout this podcast, we were talking about how these multiplex of agents can actually be your teammates, can actually be the different avenues that you can get information from. So almost feels like as you spin up these agents and have them, help you through time, it's just going to be like, yeah, I'm going to, have people to work with me of sorts.
Yeah. Managing fleets of agents now is your job.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's like having employees, really. I mean, you give them feedback
Mm.
but they are always working and they're always happy to take the feedback. So, and
Unlike humans at times.
yeah, I love humans, but man, working with agents is pretty great.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. And I kind of joke this to my friends every day. I kind of say, you know what, working with AI teammates is actually more fun than humans these days to me. So it just doesn't. I know it could
It's
sound
true.
mean, but
It's kind of
it's
true.
true.
So it is
So I
what
have
it
this
is.
T-shirt that says "Humans are overrated." I prefer ChatGPT, and I
That's
was
pretty
like
funny.
recently thinking, you know what, I want to like strike that and say a couple of things, not just ChatGPT. He had like more suggestions to the T-shirt, so have like multiple versions of the T-shirt being printed with different
That's
agents.
funny. I would buy that T-shirt. So
I'll link that to you. It's like so much fun wearing that up and the entire. So I work out of a small, office space, and then everybody looks at me when I wear the T-shirt, like, is she crazy? Is she like really okay?
nope.
Oh gosh, so much fun with AI. What a wild time we're all in. So much to ship. Awesome. Ryan, is there like oh yeah, I really don't want to forget this part, right? Because I do know that we spoke about the whole system thinking, and I really don't want to leave you without you having to walk through your systematic approach of working with these agents. I know you had like this three file system or like three-step system.
Mm,
Would really love for you to like talk a little bit around that, and I'd link to that in the show notes. But yeah, I would love for
sure.
people to have some sort of understanding around it because we spoke a lot around how do you set up these agents and how do you start talking to them. So I think this is also very contextual to help them do that.
You bet. So I initially came up with this 3-part system where you plan, and then you take that plan, which is called often a product requirement doc or a PRD,
Mm.
and then you create tasks to complete the implementation of that PRD. And then the third step is to manage the agent, to complete each step. But honestly, it's outdated now. And I'm
Exactly.
basic.
I was
Yeah,
just
I
going to
don't
ask you
do that.
that.
And that repo has, I think, over 7,000 stars now. It's a good place to start. Like, so
Mm.
I would encourage people to start there. Like,
Mm.
you basically have a PRD plan, and the agent helps you write it, and then you have a task implementation, and the agent helps you create the task, and that's fine.
Mm.
I think it's a good
Mm.
place to start. But I think now the best practice is using something like compounding engineering,
Exactly.
which is very
Mm.
similar, right? So you have
Right.
planning, you have executing, you have
Mm.
compounding, um,
Right.
and that's kind of built in now.
Right.
So I think that's what I would recommend people do
Mm.
is
A little
just look.
tweak to that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would just ask your agent to go find the compounding engineering blog post and then implement that system. And it's
Mm.
basically either a skill or a
Exactly.
plugin if you use Cloud Code. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's the main thing I'm doing, and then I'm adding on top of that this idea of compounding product. This idea that you should be creating a loop where your agent is actually shipping stuff while you sleep so that you can wake up and move faster.
Yeah.
And I'm experimenting with that. I think I've probably created with AMP, 3 or 4 PRs using compounding product. It's a new idea and I'm testing it, and
So
kind of
cool.
have found some things that work and don't work. And, but that's my current thinking about the systems that I use to ship code.
Right. No, the reason that I pointed out the three file system was also the fact that a lot of that kind of like gets a little bit tweaked or replaced with the skills that we spoke about, because now it's almost like not just Claude Code and not just Opus or Sonnet. I think every other agent is also being able to recognize a .md file and recognize what a skill training would really look like for it to get context. So the PRDs, I guess, at least would be largely replaced by the skill and what it should do and what it should not. But I think the tasks part still remains to be the whole planning out and then execution of this agent, like go get this done, raise a PR. I think that part still remains to be the whole, in uniformity with the tasks part from what you said. But crazy, just 3 months or 4 months, I guess, and then there's already like so much change.
Yeah, it does change
And
fast.
and I'm glad you said while you sleep, because it almost makes me feel happy that when I'm awake, I can still go command that agent. And it's not that,
Yeah.
it kind of does work when I'm awake. So that's almost like thinking, what the hell would I do then? So it's
Yeah.
almost like, double the work. So very, very cool. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It was fun for me as well as so much of personal learning. And it's always exciting, like, I said at the start of the show, it's always exciting to see people's workflows, what really does magic for them. And when folks listen to it, there's almost like a feeling that they get in terms of, oh, like there's someone who's figured it out and I'm also going to like do the same thing. So I think your examples are like so spot on and very much actionable for folks to get started. So really appreciate you for being here and sharing all of those notes, links, apps. And I'm going to put all of that in the show notes. But yeah, thank you so much once again.
It's been a blast. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to chatting to you and your guests in the future. Take care.
Absolutely. Take care. See you.